Kia ora and welcome to Point of View. This is the monthly podcast where we talk about what's coming up in cinemas and on streaming. We talk about what's happening out there in the film world, and we get some really cool people in to talk about their films, their television, the things that they love about the film landscape, and so on. Today we're talking to Ramon Te Wake, who is the legendary writer, actress, director, presence in Aotearoa's queer scene. She has a huge amount of amazing credits under her belt, including just recently the TVNZ series The Boy, The Queen, and everything in between. We're going to be talking to her about that, and as well as her upcoming projects as well. We're also talking to Doug Dillerman, who is a local filmmaker. He has a new film out called Gut Instinct, which is an independent science fiction feature. It's something quite unique. It's really special. It's a really, really fun experience that really speaks to Aotearoa's independent spirit and voice. So stay tuned. Ramon Te Wake, thank you so much for joining us today at Point of View.
Kia ora, thanks for having me.
How are you doing? How's life for you at the moment?
It's been an interesting year, actually. It's been quite transformative in many ways, and it's also been just interesting watching the industry kind of tip up and down, and kind of people are kind of panicking to some degree about what's going to happen, what the future of the industry looks like, and then others are just like consistently working. So I'm like, where are you getting your jobs from? But it is definitely an industry I love and will be in forever, so you just got to ride the wave, I suppose.
Absolutely, there's always those ups and downs, aren't there?
Yeah.
So let's go back to the beginning. So for those who are being introduced to Ramon Te Wake at the moment, where did your journey start? I know you grew up in Dargaville, is that correct?
Well, I was born in Dargaville.
Dargaville.
Yeah, I was born in Dargaville, and we left when I was a kid, a baby, to move to Porirua, Wellington.
Right, gotcha.
And my father got a job down there. It was actually interesting because he always said to us, I think he threatened us, that he said, we could have taken you to Maungaturoto, which was even smaller than Dargaville, like blink and you miss it, like one pub.
Yeah,
For those that live there, I apologise.
We love both of them.
Yeah, we love it all.
Absolutely.
But he's like, but I knew. He says, I knew better. So anyway, so we grew up in Ascot Park, Porirua. And I remained there till I was 18, then moved into the city and, lived a city girl life. And my parents moved back up north and kind of just been dancing and performing until I found other ways of expressing. I think I've always been a storyteller. And when I kind of did performance as a young showgirl on K Road as a teenager, and then moved into music and moved into television. So I've always just really left the door of curiosity open, I guess you could say, and just moved with however I thought was where I needed to move to. And just so happens I've been in television and film for 20 years now.
So what drew you to that world at first? Like, was it just like a natural kind of sliding across to that part of entertainment, or was it conscious, like, I want to get into this movement?
I got back from New York. I was pretending to be a musician for several years, living off the bones of my bum and, all that kind of yummy stuff you do when you're an independent artist.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, and then Māori television actually began, and so they had a casting call, I suppose, for any Māori with kind of an interest in television. And there was a lot of us, and there was one show in particular called Takataapui that was reaching out to the community for gay, lesbian and trans presenters. And yeah, eventually it landed on my door. Met Claudette Hauiti, Front of the Box Productions, and that was it. And then just kind of started my television, my screen career with Front of the Box Productions doing a show called Takataapui, which was 20 years ago.
And it was quite pioneering, wasn't it?
Yeah.
The first, you were the first kind of host of a show who was also Takataapui, is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, arguably it's the first Indigenous queer series in the world.
Wow.
And yeah, that was pretty special. I mean, when you're in it, obviously it always feels different, looks different, but you know, upon reflection, you sort of think, wow, how groundbreaking it was, you know, to be a part of that. Um, yeah, and being a trans woman on screen during that time, you know, was being in the industry was, you know, tough and exciting and strange and all that kind of
Yeah.
stuff to navigate all the stereotypes and being, you know, misgendered and kind of navigating through that whole space was interesting.
I'm so interested in how you've probably got this perspective on how the world of New Zealand film and television has evolved since then.
Yeah.
Do you think it's become a better, more welcoming space in general?
Yeah, I mean, the short answer is yes. You know, I mean, we've moved as a society. The education's better, the access to information's easier. You know, with the social media and the internet, you know, it's like back in the day, right? Back in 20 years ago, and then I'm not even speaking about the girls that had to go through stuff without the stuff that we had access to.
Yeah,
So, you
right.
know, so we definitely have come and progressed a long way, which is really, really exciting. Now there's so many queer and Takataapui people across all parts of the industry, you know, not just in front of the camera, but behind. And, you know, in positions of decision making, positions of power. And that's really exciting.
It's really special.
Yeah.
And along the way, you've been, you know, a presenter. You've been, you've performed. You've written. You've directed. This year, you created a show, The Boy, the Queen, and Everything in Between.
Did you see it?
I am halfway through, and I am really enjoying it. It's a really, really lovely show. It has a real. The thing I really love about it, particularly beyond the performances and the writing, which are both really just sparkling, is this sense of like lived in community that comes from it. It feels organic. It feels authentic. Can you tell me a little bit about how that series came to be?
Well, they always say, write what you know, right? And so I suppose my point of difference as a creative person is the fact of my lived experience. And so being able to kind of have opportunities where I can create stuff that speaks directly from myself. And the community to which I belong to and the people that I've kind of shared space with is really empowering to me and important to me. So, you know, it was during lockdown, like most people who kind of driven nuts with the whole pandemic.
Yeah.
You know, I knew I wanted to write a ton of stuff. And so I ended up writing a whole bunch of props. And this was one of them, The Boy, the Queen, and Everything in Between. And yeah, I mean, it just kind of struck a chord with a couple of networks, actually. That was fun.
Yeah.
That part was fun.
A bit of a bidding war?
Yeah.
Cool.
You know, it was bidding war. It was
Oh, yeah,
cute. It's very cute. And, you know, I ended up going with Steve Barr at TVNZ because he was just...
Oh, I love Steve.
I love Steve.
He's a great guy.
Ugh, love Steve. Love you, Steve. And yeah, and so it basically happened so quickly. We were on the train and it just went right through, and then all of a sudden we'd finished it and went to air in February this year. So it was a whirlwind.
Yeah, and you have assembled this amazing cast. Amanda Lahore, who is an amazing actress.
Yeah.
Just,
She did good, eh? She did really good.
Oh my goodness, the gravitas and the kind of this kind of regal performance, such a presence, and Awapuna as well, absolutely incredible. You also directed with Damon Fepulei, is that
Yep.
right? Who also directed Red, White, and Brass. So it's an awesome team. It's something really, really cool. How do people find that show?
I mean, you know, selfishly, I made it. People always say you've got to make things so Diane and Steve and Invercargill, or, you know, April and Peter in the far north. And
Right.
I did have them in mind, but I made it for my community.
Yeah, right.
You know, we need stuff too. You know, there's plenty of stuff for mainstream people out there, and I think we need our own things to feel proud of and see ourselves reflected. I think all of those things are really empowering, but it also contributes to really joyful and accepting environments within family. I mean, there's a whole bunch of stuff I could go into, but, it was really for our community. And so they loved it.
Yeah.
And I was really pleased with that. And, hopefully Mildred and Simon from Invercargill watched it too.
Yeah, maybe they expand their world a little bit as well. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so you can find that on TVNZ Plus.
TVNZ Plus, yeah.
And so you've also directed the show Trans and Pregnant, which has just launched. Is that correct?
Yeah, Monday.
Yeah. Can you tell us a little bit about that series?
Gosh, that was a bit of a fanfare, wasn't it? You know what? It was 3 years in the making. I guess as a in terms of documentary, that's pretty good going.
Yeah.
To kind of be stuck in the trenches with a story for that long. When we first pitched it, because we'd interviewed Rawan Frankie for another TV show that Nicola and myself, who's the producer of it, were working on called Queer in Here. And they were in front of us on a story about bisexuality and families, actually, something completely different.
Yeah, right.
Then at the end of it, we were like, so what's in the future? And they were like, we're going to have kids. And I was like, how? And we're like, well, Frank is a trans man. He goes, I'm going to have it biological. I'm going to, have it. And I was like, I think I want to tell that story.
That's an amazing story to tell.
Yeah. And it literally, much like The Boy, the Queen, we pitched it. There was initial trepidation. I think there's fear around, perpetuated by fear is perpetuated the fact that trans bodies are just, politicized. And so there's a huge amount of fear around what that looks like.
Yeah.
So I think TVNZ is beautiful. They were beautiful and they came to the party, but there was trepidation definitely initially about how we proceed and what's the duty of care look like and how do we make sure that Rao and Frankie is safe and we're safe and that, all of these things. So there was a bit of that at the beginning that continued throughout, and even more so now that we had just released it. There was a lot of meetings and hui about how we, our duty of care as creatives, as a network,
Yeah, I guess
beautiful.
It's difficult because there's so much disinformation out there about this topic, and yet the visibility element, the presenting it as something that is beautiful and worth embracing, it's about, I guess, balancing those two things.
Yeah, I agree. But what a story to tell.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, it's about love and showing human beings at its most beautiful, natural, and the baby Hiwa is 1 + 2 months. What's that? 14 months?
Yeah.
That's my math. And is just a bundle of joy and loved, and they have a beautiful, supportive community around them, so people should be able to have the family they want to have.
100%.
And they are an example of that. And the feedback has been extraordinary. Like, it was funny, we watched it together. They were at my house in Karangahapī Road on Monday, actually. Rawa, Frankie and Hiwa and Nicola, a few others. And, their phones were going off straight after, like, ting, ting, ting. And I was waiting for mine to ring. Mine didn't ring at all. But that's okay. No, I'm joking. My mum.
Oh, that's good. Okay, you got one.
I got one.
So what's in the future for you in 2025? What's planned? I know that you're working on a new documentary. Is that correct?
Yeah, we've been in development with the Film Commission on a feature, my first feature length called Denied. Initially, it was around 50 years of gay pride in Aotearoa, but we've missed that window by several years. Yeah, right. And probably will be several years by the time we actually get it off the ground.
55 years, maybe?
Maybe, yeah, but it doesn't have the same ring to it, I don't think.
Right.
It's not like... So we've given up the number thing just to kind of take us out of trapping ourselves, I guess.
Yeah, no, fair enough.
But Denied really does explore, our community and what we've been through, and through being denied, we've created the first gay pride, on the ground in 1972, led by many, but also Nahue Te Awe Kōtuku, who was one of our trailblazing activists in our community. And we do focus a lot on Takataapui voices,
Yeah.
a Maori-led stories, trans-led stories with Carmen Rupe and Georgina Bayer and Lewis Wall, and to our current Takataapui activists, because I feel like our story's been told a lot in this country
Yeah.
through different lenses, but it hasn't really been told through a Te Ao Māori or a Takataapui lens in a way that we've packaged it.
Wow.
And as Takataapui is trans and Nicola is Takataapui, we feel like this, our perspective and where we want to bring this story from is really special.
It's quite a massive scale,
Yeah.
really. So,
Yeah.
what's your process in terms of like wrangling the story, shaping it into something that can fit like a feature length shape? Or are you wanting to make quite a long, lengthy story, or?
Well, I mean, we've got our heroes. I think we just kind of sit with our heroes, like Nahuia and like Georgina. Before she passed, we did an interview with her
Wow.
because we were in development for this, and she was obviously one of our main characters in the film. So she gave us an interview. We used it as a pre-interview to get the project off the ground, and
Yeah.
she was so behind it and so excited for it. And so we have that, and she's passed, obviously. So, to us, that is taonga,
Yeah,
you know.
absolutely.
And so to be able to honour her in this way, still with her words, it's going to be such a beautiful moment for us. But, like I said, they're all Takataapui, they're wahine, they're trans. There's these pioneers, like Carmen, like Georgina, like Nahuia, like Lewis Wall, and like even the current ones, the young ones, the activists of the time, they're all Maori and all Takataapui, and I think that's really our strength, is telling these Takataapui-led stories. So that's where we'll probably focus.
So we're looking at what's coming up on the big screen in December and January as well, because we're taking a break over Christmas. So there's a lot of big stuff coming out. And to start with, we're going to talk about some of the kind of blockbustery ones that are coming out, beginning with Mufasa, the Lion King. So this is the sequel to the live-action remake of the animated film. Are you a Lion King fan?
Yeah, well, I mean, I did see the film.
Yeah.
Back in the day, for sure.
I'm going to be honest with you. I didn't catch the remake. I didn't catch the live
I didn't
action one.
either.
Something about it doesn't really fly with me. I just think it feels very. Whenever I see these like emotionless animated animals trying to
Doesn't feel right.
perform, it doesn't feel right.
Yeah.
And it feels a bit colourless. And I think what's interesting about this is that it's actually directed by Barry Jenkins, who made Moonlight.
Yes.
Yeah.
Brilliant movie.
And a brilliant movie and a brilliant filmmaker. So it's quite an interesting choice for him to do this.
It is. I mean, I just think he's like, as soon as I saw that, I just went, okay, I want to see it. Isn't it funny how you could be drawn to something?
Depending on who's involved, right?
Who's involved?
Yeah.
Then I saw Beyonce, obviously, and I'm a huge Beyonce fan.
Yeah.
And I thought, well, this is great. Like, but then definitely Barry, because Moonlight's literally on one of my top 10 films ever.
Yeah.
I mean, that opening scene, that single shot opening scene, you get to see his world. It's just like,
it's so beautiful, isn't it?
This is how you tell a story.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I think it made me more excited to see the film.
It strikes me as maybe one of those like old school, like one for me, one for them kind of things.
Yeah, right.
But if Barry Jenkins is doing it, there must be something that's bringing him to the table. So I will be seeing it for this one. We've also got another film that's quite interesting. It's called Better Man. It is about Robbie Williams. It's a biopic about Robbie Williams.
I'm sure you bought his CDs back in the day.
I really did. I had one. I had the one. No, I had the CD with all his faces as soccer players. Do you know that one?
I don't know that one.
Anyway, doesn't matter.
I'm a fan.
Listen, I'll smash a Robbie Williams every now and then.
Do you do karaoke, Robbie Williams?
Yeah, I would, absolutely.
So you must be super excited about this.
Listen, I am interested. I'm intrigued because one of the big twists of it is that it's a CGI monkey playing Robbie Williams. Don't know what the deal is with that. uh, but at least it's something new. It's something interesting. So
It's batshit crazy, and I'm here for it.
yeah,
I think we're, for some strange reason, post COVID, have moved into this batshit crazy wonder world, next level
yeah.
land where everything and anything is crazy. Yeah, and then this is just brilliant.
I just imagine that he
It's
probably
brilliant.
walked in one day and said, "I want it to be me to be a monkey in this movie," and they had to roll with it. And so we'll see. We'll see how it works out. I suppose.
Yeah, well, I saw his documentary on
Yeah. Right.
Netflix,
Yeah. Yeah.
and I mean, look, I'm not as probably as a huge fan of Robbie as you might be, and that's okay.
That's
I
going to be
get
my rep going forward now.
no,
It's Robbie
I
Williams fan.
totally get it. I totally get it. That it's yeah. But him being portrayed by a monkey makes me like gag a little. This is super exciting.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah. Yeah.
I can't wait to see it.
Absolutely.
I feel like it matches his. Like I don't know, something about him makes me cringe, but I feel like the monkey,
The cheekiness.
yeah, it just
Yeah.
matches him.
Hundred
It's like
percent.
matches his energy, so it's probably a recipe for
Well,
success.
yeah, 100%. The next one I've got here now. This one is actually a sequel to this action movie, and if you're like me, a big kind of B movie action nerd, there was a film that came out called, which might not be your scene. There was a film that came out called Den of Thieves, which
Yeah,
had Gerard Butler as the world's like sweatiest, greasiest action hero,
yeah.
and it was like a dirtball, greaseball version of that movie Heat, the Michael Mann film. And this is the sequel. It brings the main cast back together. It's going to be in cinemas. If you're looking for a switch your brain off great action film extravaganza, Den of Thieves, the original, it's a really good time in the movies. It's really trashy, like high trash, but in a really great way. And this is another one. So I'm excited for it.
I'm an action nerd.
Are you an action nerd? Okay, great.
Yeah, I don't know if that surprises you or not, but because I mean I grew up with a brother and in a household, and we grew up with Beta, and I
Yeah.
remember our first films we bought was Beastmaster.
Oh yes.
Yeah, right.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we grew up with all
Nice.
that. Yeah. Hoo-ah. And then Conan the Barbarian and that whole series, and
Right.
then
Yeah.
into Beverly Hills Cop and Die Hard, Bruce Willis,
Yes.
iconic. So I grew up in action. So I'm the type of girl that would pay to go and see an action movie over something a lot more artful.
Yeah, I would
I,
totally feel you.
I know it
You want
doesn't
to
make
get the
sense.
spectacle on the big screen. Oh, that makes
Yes.
sense. That makes total sense.
Yes.
Absolutely.
And all my friends are just like, "Oh, why?" And I'm like, what do you mean why? Beekeeper. It's on
Oh,
rotation.
the Beekeeper. This kind of is coming out at the same time as the Beekeeper did in January,
Right.
which is a great time for an action film to come out.
Hmm.
And I feel like it's going to fill the same void. It's going to hit the same marks. And the Beekeeper was such a great time.
That was so good. Gerard Butler, I mean, he's dependable, isn't he?
He is,
You
yeah,
know,
yeah.
he's,
You can
he's,
always rely on him to turn in something worth watching.
I think he gets gruff. I hope he gets gruffier. Like, I feel like he's getting gruffier as
He's
he
definitely
gets
getting
older.
like the beer gut, but like
Yeah.
in like a action hero-y kind of way.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, I
Yeah.
dig it. I dig it.
Yeah.
Okay, so a little bit of a shift. We've also got a film called The Haka Party Incident coming up by Katie Wolf. Have you
Yeah.
seen this film?
I have not seen it, and I felt really bad that I hadn't seen it. But it was originally a play, right?
Yes, it
Stage
was.
play.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
it was also at Whanau Marama, New Zealand International Film Festival this year,
Yeah.
and it tells the story of back in the day in the 70s, engineering students at the University of Auckland, white, exclusively white male, decided to do a little bit of blackface and dressing up
As you
as
do.
tangata
As you
whenua and
do.
doing yeah, but generally causing chaos. And they were met by a protest group, and it
Yeah.
resulted in a conflict. But it's a really, really powerful, interesting documentary that takes this moment in history that might have been swept under the rug and really blows it up to make it about, you know, Māori Pākehā relations in general.
Yeah.
Really, really powerful story, and really well put together. And it puts some of the people who were actually involved in the spotlight, some of the people who like took part and were part of the haka party,
Mm.
and yeah, grills them. And it's
Do they
pretty.
have regrets? Do you know? Does it talk about that?
So it's really interesting because some of them try and explain it away or justify it, and then others show their regret. They kind of take some accountability,
Right.
and there's tension in there. It's really, really interesting. It's really worth watching.
I mean, Katie Wolf is a talent, isn't
Yeah,
she?
absolutely. Yeah, because she has quite a story film and television career before this.
Yeah,
And
right.
they had the show as well.
Yeah. And you know what? I mean, I'm all for like stage plays being turned into docos or slash films. You know, we did a one called Inky Pinky Ponky, which was.
Oh, I love Inky Pinky Ponky.
Yeah.
It's so great.
It's great. It's great, huh? But that was originally a stage play that like did tremendously well.
Yeah, I didn't even realise that.
Yeah, so it comes from that, and then it was turned into a film, which you know I was great. I was so happy to be able to be part of it. So I do love it when we're able to kind of give it more than one life.
Yeah.
Just feels like, you know, didn't get the point across. Well, we get it across this way, you know. I think that's really powerful.
Yeah, it's great to keep the kind of awareness and the visibility and all that alive by reinventing and that kind of thing.
And the conversations, obviously, really conversations around activism and race and racism. I think, you know, we want to keep them moving and alive in this country.
Yeah. Well, it's coming out at a real flashpoint kind of time as well. It does speak to, and actually in the film, it draws attention to the relationships with the current coalition government and that kind of thing as well. So it's pretty interesting. We've also got Dahomey coming up, which is filmed by a filmmaker called Mati Diop, who made a film called Atlantics, which you can see on Netflix. Really, really beautiful film. Dahomey is a really interesting documentary. This was also at Whananarama, and it's about the repatriation of stolen Beninese artifacts returning to Benin, and the arguments around them and people going and seeing them and returning to the homeland after decades and decades of having been stolen and so it's if that sounds dry, it's not dry at all. It's actually narrated by the spirit of someone who's captured in one of these statues. It's a very, very powerful story, and Mati Diop is a fascinating filmmaker. It's also only an hour long, so it's not going to take too much of your time, but it will leave a huge mark on you. Really, really powerful. I
mean, there's the kinds of documentaries that really fill your heart, right? With joy and with purpose, because taonga is so precious to Indigenous people, right? The returning of taonga to its rightful place is powerful.
Absolutely.
And the conversations around all of that, you know, I mean, Māori have been having taonga being returned home for decades, right? And just the whole process of that, and to just be a witness of it returning home, I mean, it just makes your heart feel full.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's such a complex there's so many difficult feelings to work through, but it's all part of it, and it's in this film as well.
Beautiful.
We've also got we've got 4 different big horror films dropping in January. Are you a horror fan?
You know what? I'm obsessed with horror. I feel like horror has come back and it is here to stay.
Absolutely. The big one is Nosferatu, which is Robert Eggers, who did The Witch and The Northman and those kinds of films.
Yeah.
He's remade the classic vampire film. It's getting some pretty good notices.
Yeah, nice. I can't wait to see it.
Even some Oscar buzz, so I'm excited for that.
Yeah.
We've got The Wolfman, which actually shot here in New Zealand.
Yep.
Lee Whannell, who is the director of The Invisible Man. So that's that one actually has a really promising trailer, so that one looks quite cool. We've got this film Presence, which is a ghost story by Steven Soderbergh, who's a master.
Yeah, totally. But I'm just obsessed with I saw the trailer. Lucy Liu is literally one of my favourites from Kill Bill. Just anything she touches. But just I read somewhere that he slipped on his slippers and just slid around the house and did single shot takes. So,
and he shot on an iPhone, which is crazy.
I mean, that's him taking his kind of artistry up and
his whole shtick, I
don't need a big thing. Just go here with my slippers on.
And apparently it's really scary, so that's great.
Yeah.
And then also Companion, which is quite mysterious. It's from the makers of Barbarian, but there's like literally very little is known about what it actually is. Apparently it's something to do, a love story is what they're advertising it as, but we don't know much more than that. But it's a really good month for horror.
The horror genre? Are you a horror fan?
Yeah, I used to not be, but I've since embraced it. I watched Smile 2 and the other day, and it completely ruined sleeps for the next 3 months. But it's a great genre. I'm really into it now.
The Substance was the last one I saw.
Oh,
a few nights ago. It is bonkers and brilliant, and just I couldn't stop smiling. I'm not sure if that's what you're supposed to do with horrors, but just it feels like old school kind of monstery-esque.
Yeah,
This is coming back. It feels really visceral.
Yeah, like classic monsters here, the Wolfman and Nosferatu and stuff. Very cool.
Yeah.
And then also on the other end of the spectrum, we've got awards hopefuls. So obviously Oscar season is coming up, so we're starting to see those Oscar films. We've got the A Real Pain, which unites Kieran Culkin from Succession with Jesse Eisenberg, who directs.
Brilliant.
It's a drama about them reconnecting with their Jewish roots. We've got A Complete Unknown, which is Timothée Chalamet playing Bob Dylan.
It's your face. Says it all.
Yeah, I don't know about that. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, he is the man of the moment.
Yeah.
He's part of the kind of current modern day Rat Pack, right? But
Yeah.
and
Yes, yeah.
I feel like Dune 2 was one of my favorite films of the year, and Timothy's in it, so is Zendaya. She's literally goddess material.
Yeah.
But I don't know.
Yeah, well, you were telling me before you're a bit of a music fan. Are you a Bob Dylan fan?
I mean, yes. I see him live. I could barely hear anything. And this is like late 90s. So,
Yeah, right. Still going strong.
Still going strong, but yeah. I mean, I am. I'm curious. I'm curious to see it, and I shall reserve my judgment.
Yeah, no, fair enough. I'll probably try and do the same. I have a bit of a I don't know. I feel put off by these like biopics, but
yeah,
we'll see what happens. I'll reserve judgment until then. We've also got The Brutalist, which is dropping in January. This one is interesting. It's directed by Brady Corbett, and it's 4 hours long. There's an intermission, which doesn't happen much these days. It's got Adrian Brody, and it's drawing comparisons to The Godfather. So we will see what happens there. It's like a grand American story. So. I'm quite interested to see that one. I'm also interested to see Maria, which is Angelina Jolie returning to the big screen.
Mm-hmm.
And she's playing an opera singer whose name I forgot to.
Callas?
Yes,
Maria
Callas. Yes, that's the one. And so she's drawing Oscar buzz for her performance.
I mean, so she should. That woman is just.
I feel like she's Jew.
She's just like delicious. I don't care what anyone says.
She's.
From Gia to Girl Interrupted, like that woman, and then Tomb Raider, like she can fight and she can be present and she can be, she's brilliant. So I will watch it because she is Maria.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the costume, and it looks incredible.
And it's Pablo Larraín who also did Jackie and Spencer. So,
so
his trilogy of doomed woman, I guess. So it's
they dress amazingly.
Also coming up in the next couple of months, we've got Kraven the Hunter, which is another one of the Spider-Man villain spin-offs. It's got Aaron Taylor-Johnson as the titular hunter.
Hot.
We've got Lord of the Rings, War of the Rohirrim, which is an anime version of the story of Helm Hammerhand, where the story of Helm's Deep before Lord of the Rings happened. Looks really interesting, an interesting direction to take Lord of the Rings. All We Imagine It As Light, which was at Whānau Marama, really beautiful story from India by Payal Kapadia, I believe her name is. No, that's not right. Anyway, it's a really, really amazing, beautiful drama. We've got Sonic 3, which is the video game adaptation, the third one. They are hugely successful. Jim Carrey is back as the villain. We've got The Room Next Door, which is Pedro Almodovar's latest film. It's got Tilda Swinton and Julianne Moore. We've got Conclave, which was at the British and Irish Film Festival, which is meant to be a very delicious thriller with Ralph Fiennes in it, set during a papal conclave. And we've got We Live in Time, which is a bit of a weepy with Andrew Garfield and Florence Pugh, two very cool actors, which is meant to be very good as well. So, we also have coming up two big Oscar buzz films. People are thinking it might be down to these two in terms of the big awards.
Yeah.
So the first one we've got is Anora. Mm-hmm. And Anora is the story of a sex worker in America, played by Mikey Madison, who gets caught up in a whirlwind marriage with the son of a Russian oligarch. So you got a chance to watch the trailer for
I
this
did.
one?
Oh, it looks so good.
Yeah, it
It looks
does.
so good. It
It
looks
does.
menacing and tumultuous and like modern love, and I don't know, it feels
Yeah, it gave me a little bit of a feeling of something like Uncut Gems or something like that. That kind
yeah.
of stressful,
Yeah.
really on the ground filmmaking it's about like something gritty to it.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
And it's from Sean Baker, who has made the Florida Project and Red Rocket and Tangerine, three really cool American films.
Yeah.
Have you seen any of those ones?
Tangerine. I mean, hello.
It's
If
a
you haven't
special
seen
film.
Tangerine, I don't know where you've been hiding.
Yeah.
But that alone, I mean, just for the representation, but also just like the quality and it was like one of the first films filmed on a phone, right? Or
Yeah,
one of the ones.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So very smart, and he just lets people, just shows people warts and all. I think that's just that.
Totally.
The energy he's got with his work. So I'm really excited to see Nora.
Yeah, and there's a lot of discussion around it because obviously we can tell from the work that he's done that he's quite interested in the lives of the working class, but also specifically he's interested in the lives of sex workers. And there's been a bit of controversy around that, but I think, I mean, we will obviously reserve our judgment until we've seen it. But I think from this standpoint, anything that highlights that experience is probably valuable in this kind of climate that we're living in at the moment. Yeah.
I agree.
We've also got Amelia Perez, which is Jacques Audiard's extravaganza. It's a musical. It's a cartel story. It's a story about a trans gang lord from Mexico who leaves the world of Mexican cartels by transitioning, and the kind of after impacts of that, including what happens to his family or her family once she leaves. So this one has drawn a lot of controversy as well, particularly I think because Jacques Audiard has made some great films, but he's a white Frenchman who doesn't necessarily have much connection to either Mexico or the trans experience.
Right.
So I'd be quite interested. Did you watch the trailer for this one?
I have, and it is. I can't wait to see it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's just been so much written about it. I've seen so much hype around it. They've won a ton of awards already.
Yeah, they the Best Actress prize was shared by the three leads at Cannes.
Yeah, and I think they were all on their A game, and I'm just super excited to see the story. I mean, it's funny. Me and my flatmate were talking about it the other night, and she's like, "Oh, I don't know." As soon as I mentioned that it's also a musical. She was like, "Oh, that's just made me feel a certain kind of way." And I sort of thought, "Oh yeah, I suppose there's all those other elements." But I mean, I just the idea of it really fascinates me, captivates me, and I'm always a huge fan of trans visibility and representation on screen, and especially showing really nuanced characters. I think is where we get to kind of shift the stereotypes. Of what's I mean. Film has done us dirty for generations, like just hovering over these perceptions and stereotypes. And so I think any chance we get to kind of see really nuanced, lived, truthful, varied kind of versions of ourselves in our lives is really impactful.
Yeah, and even if it generates discussion or it generates, that's part of the visibility, right?
Yeah.
I've heard that it's been compared also to, we mentioned them before, Almodovar, and films of his like All About My Mother and that kind of thing, which are really beautiful films. So anything that works within that framework I think is something worth taking a look at anyway. That one is releasing in cinemas and also on Netflix, I believe.
Have you seen the movie?
I haven't seen it.
No. Not that you'd get a bootleg or anything, but
no, definitely not.
No. No, I'm very excited to see it. And I want to see it on the big screen now.
Yeah, absolutely. If you're going to see a musical, you might as well see it on the big screen.
I know, but I don't know about you, but I find myself, like, I have all these intentions. Like, I wanted to see June 2 on the big screen. So I'm going to the movies, and I was thinking, I'll sneak KFC chicken into the St. Luke's one and sit there and wait for the lights to go down and pull out my chicken. But I didn't. I ended up getting it on, like, at home and watching it on the TV. And so
Yeah.
Do you go to this movies?
I'm a bit of a purist. If I'm gonna see a movie, I prefer to see it on the big screen, just because the experience is so much better.
Yeah.
But it is hard. It is hard, especially because there's just so much that comes out, and I'm like, oh, I've got to go and see that. Especially like older films that are being shown again, and it's always hard to kind of drag myself out and go. But it is worth it most of the time.
Yeah, I totally agree.
Yeah, yeah.
Sorry, just on the Emilia Perez, Selena Gomez, I'm really excited to see her in it. And I love Zoe. I just love
Yeah,
Zoe.
Zoe Saldana as well.
And so I just sort of think, what three powerhouse women, right? It's all about them trying to find their happiness, isn't it? Also?
Yeah, I think it's about trying to make peace with the things that have happened and move forward, but with all these kind of crazy elements thrown in as well. It's meant to be quite high melodrama. It's musical. It's a gangland story. It's a queer story. It's all these things mashed into one. So that's quite interesting.
Yummy.
We've also got coming up in December, we have a special screening at the Capitol Cinema. It's our last Capitol Cinema Film Club of the year. We're going to be showing Garth Maxwell's Jack Be Nimble. Garth Maxwell, amazing New Zealand filmmaker. Jack Be Nimble, in my opinion, is one of the greatest of all New Zealand films. So it's really wonderful that we're going to be able to sit down with him and have a Q&A afterwards and show this amazing film. It's a really beautiful film.
How very cool is that?
Over on streaming, over the next couple of months, we've got some pretty exciting stuff coming up. One of the big ones dropping in December is Squid Game Season 2. So, did you watch Squid Game Season 1?
I did. It's
during
nuts.
lockdown?
Yeah. It's crazy.
It's a pretty crazy thing. So this is a kind of dystopian commentary on capitalism from South Korea. It's hyper violent. It's about a group of desperate kind of working South Korean people who get drawn into this demonic game show where they're killed at will, and it comes down to whoever survives gets a giant pot of money. So the second season, I don't know where it's going to go, but I only imagine it's just going to get turned up to 11. There's only one survivor from the last season who's coming back, and then there's going to be a new cast, a new game. So we'll see what kind of crazy things they get up
What do you
to.
think is going to happen? Do you think it'll just like the volume will be turned up on the types of games, or?
Yeah, I don't really know. I mean, I imagine the violence will probably get turned up as well.
Yeah.
I think there was some clues dropped in or seeded through at the end where the main character from the first season is coming back to try and disrupt the game. So we'll see what happens in that sense. But it has been a while. It's been like 4 years almost since the last season dropped. So a lot has changed in that time. It was a big lockdown product, so it's going to be interesting to see how attitudes have changed to it and what's changed within the series as well.
Got it.
We've also got, in January, we've got Severance, the long-awaited return of Severance, which is an Apple TV show. This one is kind of futuristic dystopian show. Did you have a chance to take a look at
You
this
know
one?
what? It was on my list. I have not had a chance to
No,
see
Apple
it.
TV is quite difficult to access as well. It's not necessarily the one that people go to off the bat, as opposed to like Netflix or Neon or something
I
like
do
that.
have Apple, and I do watch some of their stuff for some strange reason.
Well, Severance is quite a meaty, like heady show, where it's about this medical procedure that people can get where they split themselves, their consciousness in two, basically become two different people. So in the work environment, they're one person, they can't remember anything of what happens there on the outside. It's got a great cast: Adam Scott, Christopher Walken, John Turturro, a whole bunch of other cool people.
Did you like it?
I really did.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really liked the first season. I remember coming away from the pilot and thinking, wow, that was quite a special hour of television. It's directed by Ben Stiller, who is well known as a comic actor, but he's actually quite a talented director as well. So it's well worth a watch.
The whole series is done by Ben.
Yeah,
Oh,
and I think
fair
the
time.
second season is all him as well. So, or I might be wrong there, but he is still definitely a voice in there. So
Yeah, cool.
It's visually it's very specific. It's got a very specific style, great performances, a big concept, lots of mystery, kind of lost-ish in places. So it's a really, really cool series. So I'm quite excited for the second season.
Well, I'm going to watch it now after
They
that.
sold you. We're coming to the end of the year. It has
Yes.
been a big year for film and television. In December, I release a list of my favourite films of the year. So I'm quite interested what you've been taken by this year. I know you mentioned June Part 2.
Yes, June. Challenges.
Challenges. Yeah, that
Yeah.
is a really, really special film, isn't
It's
it?
so special. That what's to me is more special about the film is the score. Like,
Yeah, right. Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross.
it
Yeah.
wasn't just what it was how it was used. And just, I mean, it gave me so much gorgeous anxiety. Like,
Yeah.
just when it came up in the middle, like, but it's like it popped out of nowhere. And we're talking dance tracks, right? We're talking like electronic kind of.
Oh, you could play them at the club, like
1000%, which is really interesting because I feel like a lot of people are adopting this type of styling. Like Substance did it beautifully
Yeah,
as well,
absolutely.
you know. But it would just appear mid scene, mid conversation, and I'm sure to punctuate, you know, what was going on with the emotional kind of volley between the characters, which was always really fun. But then I liked how it would quieten, then disappear, then 2 minutes later come back up again
Yeah.
in a different scene. And so I was just riveted. Like the score just blew my mind. I just made a short film which we're screening at the weekend.
Cool.
Could wait now. And I said to our editor, I was like, have you seen Challenges? So they do this thing, and what I just explained. So I'm not saying we ripped it off, but we did do
Inspired by.
we did do moments where we'd kind of pull it in and take it up and stuff like that. So anyway, that's how good it was, because it just inspired me, you know.
fantastic. Are you a Luca Guadagnino fan in general?
I mean, Call Me By Your Name was really lovely, but definitely Challenges
Yeah.
was pretty special.
Yeah, kind of. It was like a new level of
Yeah.
his kind of work, right?
Yeah.
But there's another one of his coming out called Queer, which has Daniel Craig, and he's getting Oscar buzz for it. It's an adaptation of a book about I believe he's like a journalist or a writer who is on a bit of a bender, and he gets into this kind of thorny queer relationship.
Thorny?
Something
Okay.
like that. It's twisted or
Yeah.
something like that. And it's drawing some great reviews, and it's another side to Daniel Craig, who is having quite an interesting post-Bond career.
Yeah.
It's also been one that's been the topic of some discussion. I mean, Guadagnino is queer himself, but Craig obviously isn't. Where do you land on this kind of discussion of not queer actors taking the roles of, these sorts of roles and performing them?
I mean, I think queer representation on screen has progressed so much.
Yeah.
Right? And I think we can now safely say that non-queer people can play queer characters on screen.
Yeah.
I think, they've been in that safe net for a few decades now. Well, maybe for the last decade. I know that we live in a world where, people should be played by lived experience is really important. But I think trans visibility and representation is not as progressed. So,
Yeah.
and we're also heavily politicized. So, when you think about trans representation on screen, quite often have been played by non-trans people.
Yeah.
And, they've been, ripped to shreds and
There's
terrorized.
there's been some bad ones.
Totally some bad ones and some backlash. And you sort of think, oh, well, it does make sense to have a trans person play, and I think for, someone who loves to act and also has access to a lot of trans actors, everyone just wants the opportunity to be able to play a role, and playing trans characters I think are really crucial for trans people to play. Do I think we'll get to a point where we can safely feel like anybody can play trans characters? I don't know if we're there yet. I feel but I definitely sort of think non-queer men can play. It's almost like the arguments on the other side where gay men don't always have to play gay roles.
Yeah,
there's a
totally.
lot of gay men who are out and proud who are playing straight characters.
Yeah, absolutely.
But they have a level of freedom that we've arrived in terms of this progress
Yeah.
for gay men and lesbian people to be able to play queer or non-queer roles.
Yeah, it's almost like that was the first frontier. It's a model
Yeah.
that hopefully
Yeah.
at some point can be replicated by trans awareness, but isn't there yet.
Yeah, because
at this
I know a
stage.
lot of trans actors also want to play non-trans roles.
Yeah,
you know,
totally.
I think it's just going to take a little bit more time for trans people to be able to, for audiences to feel kind of like we're not duping them, or
Yeah.
there's some weird stuff that
Some weird political thing going on. Or
yeah,
something,
you know, and I hope we get to see it in my lifetime, but I think it's getting better, you know, for sure. But I don't have a problem with Daniel playing this role. Do I think? I mean, I'm excited to see what
What he gets
he
up to.
does.
Yeah.
And I hear the sex scenes are out the gate, which you know, I
You
think.
can rely on that from Luca Guadagnino. He's pretty into that sort of stuff.
Yeah, but I feel like that even just with not even this one, I've heard there's lots of other queer stories and queer love sex scenes where they've just been really super explosive, and I'm just like,
Yeah.
whoa, there's no stop sign. They're just going for it with all this queer kind of
Yeah,
sexiness.
sauciness. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Oh, fantastic.
That's a huge sign.
Yeah,
you
that
know?
is a huge sign. Yeah,
It's like,
absolutely.
what are your thoughts on it?
I think I feel the same in that it feels like we have reached a point where there is a good amount of saturation in certain areas of that of queer representation, but not all areas. And so, you know, it's still an uphill struggle, and as long as it's being met by an adequate representation on one side, then it should be okay, especially if the filmmaker himself is queer. But yeah, as you say, there's definitely more room to improve in other areas, less represented parts of this world.
Yeah, I mean, you brought it up before about The Boy, the Queen, and like how one of the things you really appreciated about it was the lived experience of
Yeah,
the characters.
100%.
And, you know, like Gigi and Max in particular weren't actors. I mean, they've had more stage experience than anybody else that was
Yeah,
probably
totally.
on that set, combined and individually. So, you know, but we knew that I'd rather have lived experience over actors, you know. And at one point, I think we did look at exploring, you know, trying to find them in a short amount of time, because I don't know, but New Zealand likes to make sure we work like
Yeah,
in this time
totally.
frame
Yeah.
to make, you know, global hits.
Yeah, get it done.
Get it done. And so under that pressure, I wasn't sure if we were going to find. So we're going to actually have to go outside of the community, because I shoulder tapped quite a few people, and they were like, "Oh, not free." Not.
Yeah,
So you know, the fear of having to have kind of non-queer people
Yeah.
play the roles too just really freaked me out. But luckily for us, we found beautiful Gigi and beautiful Max.
Yeah.
But yeah.
And I mean, the feeling that comes from that is that the fact that some of them are non-actors is remarkable, because they feel so at home, so comfortable, which must come from the kind of the co-op over the whole thing and where it grows from, and your directing style and that kind of thing.
That's what I think audiences demand. That's what we demand, though. Like,
Yeah.
if we demand to see authenticity, then this is what you have to do to get it. Is that you have to cast people.
Truly.
Because as an audience, you want to go into there and feel like you're watching something real and powerful. You know, because people can sniff now if they feel duped, or if they feel like
yeah.
they're being deceived. You know, you didn't necessarily. I mean, you can't get away with it now, more so than ever. But I feel like it's up to us as audience members to go into films demanding that what we've seen comes from a real lived
Yeah.
truth, because our experience as an audience becomes so much more meaningful.
Yeah,
You know?
absolutely.
We're not getting ripped off.
Yeah, totally. Ramon Te Wake, it has been an absolute pleasure to speak to you today.
You too.
And to dig deep into all these different aspects of the film scene. Please come back, and thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.
It's been awesome. Cheers.
You
Stuff coming up over the Christmas January period over on Rialto Channel. In December, every Thursday, we're doing The Sounds of Summer, which is a music documentary series with some really amazing stories on offer. The big one at the top, obviously, In Restless Dreams, the songs, the music of Paul Simon. It is a massive documentary deep diving into the life and the writing of one of America's most profound and ingenious songwriters. We've also got a film called Ego, the Michael Gudinski story, which is about an Australian record executive. Looks like a lot of fun. We've got Revival 69, the concert that rocked the world. This is a PBS documentary talking about Revival 69, which was a really high-stakes rock and roll concert that involved John Lennon and the Plastic Ono Band. And also Stock Aitken Waterman, I can never say that properly, The Legends of Pop, which is a documentary about Stock Aitken Waterman, the songwriting trio. Over in January, don't forget we have our Wednesday night, every Wednesday night we have our retrospective of David Blythe. David Blythe, one of our most special, underrated New Zealand filmmakers. He has such a long and storied career. I was lucky enough to speak to him last month about his new film Night Freaks. So every Wednesday night we're going to be showing something from his back catalogue, and they are all worth a look. So please stay tuned to Rialto Channel. There's some really good stuff coming up. We have a few really special giveaways over the Christmas period. We have a little bit of a Christmas package coming together that you can find out about over at viewmag.co.nz. Keep an eye on that. There's some really good stuff being given away. In the meantime, I will see you guys again in February. A very happy Christmas to you all. Take care. Happy New Year. Toi tu te tiriti and ka kite.